Good evening. Thank you for joining me this evening for another edition of One Night Stand. This is where we look at one work by one artist for one night. Tonight we're going to be looking at a painting by Karen Woods called Crescent from 2008, and it is currently on view at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art as a part of our curator Julia Jessen's newest show, one of her newest shows, called Elemental: Earth, Water, Air, and Fire, which opened on April 18th. And it is looking at how artists address or approach the four basic elements. And when you see Karen Woods's work, you'll immediately know what element she's exploring. So, just a short programming note before we get underway. This is going to be the last one night stand for the spring. We're going to take a hiatus over the summer. People will get very busy over the summer, and it's not always a great time to take a break and look at art. It's always great to look at art, but people don't have as much time in the summer as they do other times of the year. So we will resurrect this program in the fall. So just make that sort of note in your calendar. We will not be doing one night stands in June, July, or August. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, okay, you should be able to see it. So let me begin my slideshow from the beginning. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at Karen Woods's painting Crescent from 2008. This is the work in question. It is appears to be this really wonderful photograph, but actually it is an oil on canvas. It's a real tour de force in sort of a realistic manner of painting. It is a work that we acquired the year that it was made in 2008. It's a fairly sizable work at 23 by 29 inches. And you can see it's an extraordinary painting that looks at this kind of view of the road, kind of from the front seat of a car in kind of a rainstorm, where there is water on the windshield that has recently been swiped, because you can see that nice little arcing along the bottom there that says the windshield wipers have recently gone across this surface. And you can see the cars sort of coming at you from in the other lane. It's really this wonderful moment in time that the artist captured. And in doing research for this presentation, I found all kinds of really wonderful quotes by Karen Woods about her work, what she's thinking about, her working process, and I'm going to share those with you during the course of the work, as well as share with you other works that she's created that give context for this piece. But before we jump in there, I suppose I should start by saying that here's one quote that to kind of kick things off. She says, "For some time now, I've chronicled my journey by painting what I experienced while driving around the city. I paint in the realist tradition, from photographs taken at intersections and on the road, when I've been struck by the beauty in the ordinariness of my commute." Really extraordinary kind of poetic evocative language that sort of is the foundation for these paintings. She also says and this is a quote from an article in 2016, "The two-dimensional view of the windshield versus the three-dimensional quality of the space behind the windshield is intriguing to me and is something I have fallen in love with. I want to communicate how beautiful rain makes things. Even the most mundane scene of a crosswalk or intersection. It makes something we see every day more precious." And she goes on to talk a little bit about her working method, how she takes hundreds of photographs and how she calls through them to the one that sort of really speaks to her, that sort of re-triggers the emotional feeling of being in that moment at that time. And she says, to paint these very time consuming and energy consuming, and if it doesn't, I'm sorry, let me start there again. To paint these is very time consuming and energy consuming. And if it doesn't take hold of me emotionally, then I'm not going to last painting it. And it's not worth the time. It has to be a very strong response to the photograph or something in it. And often, I don't know what that is. I can't identify whether it's a color or a mood or a play of light or composition. I don't often know what it is, even when I'm finished, but I know there is something important. And you will frequently see in a number of her paintings, I'll show you, there's some sort of element like a bit of the car, the edge of a window or a side mirror, or the clear curved area left by a windshield wiper, which is what we're seeing here. These indicators situate the viewer in the scene itself. You now are Karen Woods. You're seeing things from her perspective by giving you these little telltale signs in the composition. She could easily have chosen to paint this without that swipe along the bottom. And and you would say, okay, this is an image, obviously we're on the road, but this that swipe along the bottom where the windshield wiper has been really truly situates you, the viewer, in the scene itself. You are in her moment, in this kind of frozen moment of what she's captured on film and then translated to painting. I'm going to show you a few details to kind of give you a sense of what a tour de force painting this is. So this is a little bit closer zoom in. You can see that there's a kind of a bad glare on the canvas at the top of this particular image. And I like that actually in this image because it gives you a sense that it really is. You get the texture of the canvas and it betrays how very, very, very thinly this work is actually painted. So you get all of that wonderful sense of illusion of looking through a car windshield in some sort of rainstorm at other traffic and all of the lights from the other traffic, the reflections in the raindrops, off the street or the road, off the cars themselves, all sort of happening at the same time, but all being painted on a flat surface with this extraordinary illusion of depth. Or here, even closer, and when you stand back from it, it totally reads. When you get up close to it, you're like, wow, what a lot of decisions, what a lot of choices the artist is making in sort of creating this illusion. It's more than just trying to make the viewer believe what they're looking at is something that is so very, very realistic. It's really a lot of these particular choices of how to render those elements so that they do read believably. When you get up close to it like this, it all dissolves. It becomes paint on canvas, which in its most fundamental way, that's what it is, paint on canvas. But when you step back, you get this extraordinary sense of the overall composition. Here, in even closer detail, we again see the weave of the canvas beneath that paint, and then it just becomes this extraordinary abstract composition in and of itself, which is sort of kind of funny because the overall composition is extraordinarily realistic or naturalistic, but yet when you get in close like this, it becomes a really, really cool sort of abstract composition at the same time. And here a detail of the upper right-hand side here of one of the cars in the distance, and these really cool water droplets. And here another really terrific abstract composition, if you will. Again, with the glare, that's not, intentional in the canvas itself, but gives you a sense of what the real weave of the canvas looks like. And you don't see that experience at all when you're standing in front of the work. You don't see that glare. It's just sort of a manifestation of the photograph. So here is Karen Woods, who was born in Seattle, Washington in 1963. And she has had numerous group and solo shows. She received her BFA, I should say, from the California College of Arts in Oakland in 1987. And since that time has had a very steady history of showing, both, as I said, in group and solo shows. She's represented by four different galleries across the country: the Stewart Gallery in Boise, the George Billis Gallery in New York, and in Fairfield, Connecticut, the Billis Williams Gallery in Los Angeles, and the Quigley and Company Fine Art in Nantucket, Massachusetts, and Naples, Florida. So these four galleries have represent her work, and she's been producing quite a body of work throughout her career. And I want to share with you some of these others. So I have been able to find quite a few images of her work. And if you were interested in exploring more, you could find plenty on the internet. What has been most challenging is finding dates to go with the work. So wherever I had any information about a work of art, I've included it. But one of the things I noticed is there's a lack of dates. So I'm not going to be showing you these things in any sort of sequential manner because I don't have precise dates. But I'll be showing you things sort of more thematically. So this one is called Just Up the Street. It's one of the smaller works. It's smaller than the piece that we have. This is 15 by 15 inches, and she produced a whole series of smaller works. And we'll see later a whole series of larger works. Ours is sort of kind of in the middle of the size. And here again, we're seeing without the swipe of the windshield wiper or any, we're really not sure what we're viewing through. We have to assume, because we're kind of looking down a road, that we're in a car. We haven't been giving the other elements that we have, say, in the painting that we own. But one thing we have, this wonderful kind of rivulet of water that's coming down, almost bisecting the composition in half. And she does speak a little bit about the trickle of water, as it were. She said, um, it's the way a trickle of water can just completely cut a light post in half, and the other visual things that happen when looking out a window when it's raining. So she really sees the rain as a prism through which to experience the reality of what lies beyond that window pane, or that window plane in this case. And so, so the focus is on these droplets, is on these water droplets or this trickle of water coming down. And then what you see beyond that is very blurry, because this is, that is sort of what's implied to be behind the scene. But it's really the focus on the water and what the water does to play with the elements that are behind it, and to magnify or dapple it. Here, another a wonderful example of a trickle of water. Here, kind of coming along the sides to the center. This is northbound PCH, which stands for Pacific Coast Highway. You can see the palm trees blowing in the wind there. It looks like a pretty intense little rainstorm going on. This is from 2025, so it's very recent, and it's a big one. So it's 40 by 60 inches. So it's a large composition. It's not the sunny Pacific Coast Highway scene that you normally see. It's the one that's in the rain. And again, you see cars in both directions. But it's again how the water here, less precise. The focus in this case tends to be on the middle ground, So those cars that are sort of coming at you, the first cars that are coming at you, are the things that are most in focus. Things in the far distance are out of focus, and the things that the rain droplets themselves are also out of focus, but they still do the same function. They still kind of distort the overall scene. Or here another composition that again about sort of that trickle of water here, a bridge. You can see how that whole bridge is really kind of distorted. It's very blurry. It's almost sort of like a double vision of the bridge. And then you look at the oncoming traffic on the other side of the median there, you see that wonderful play of the headlights with kind of little streamers that come off of them. That's very much sort of kind of that real optical effect of this kind of dusky moment in this sort of clouded over rainstorm. And here, a different scene. Here, it's in a rainstorm. You can see rain on the windshield. You can see the swipe of the windshield wiper. You can see a little bit of the hood. You can see a little bit of the dashboard as well. And you're looking through a tunnel in Central Park. So she does find a lot of her inspiration in the places that she travels. I believe I read a note where early on she would visit New York, and she likes New York as a subject matter because there's a lot of lights to play with. And she would choose a rainy day, and she would get into a taxi cab, and she would tell the driver, "I've got this much money. Just drive until it's done." And she would just sit there and take hundreds and hundreds of photographs as the driver would travel throughout the city. So and then from there she distills those. Once she prints those photographs, she distills them and makes the choices. So here on Dawn in Central Park, two a smaller work, 9 by 13 inches, so rather intimate. You can see it is this wonderful time of day. It's dawn. There's a rainstorm going on. You can see the wonderful play with the lights on the underside of the bridge here, and pay close attention to that wonderful play of of sort of reflected light on the hood of the car where that water is. It's picking up those glints of light from those overhead lights, as are the water droplets in the part that hasn't been hit by the windshield wipers. And I've got a little bit longer quote here, which could apply to really so many of her pieces, but I'm just going to read it here now. So um, she said, "I'm primarily an oil painter whose subject is the traveler's view, looking through a window of a moving vehicle. The images are made using photographs from inside different modes of transportation: cars, airplanes, ferries, and often, though not always, in rainy weather. After selecting a photograph from many possible prints, the painting process begins by loosely brushing in the image's main components. Then gradually, layer upon layer, the painting is refined until I've communicated its essence. Not the essence of the photograph, but the original experience. Its consequence, realism, is not an end, but a means of conveyance. The realism allows the viewer to enter into and share the experience. The painting reclaims the moment, explores its detail, and mines its emotional content. Nostalgic revelry is not the intent. Rather, I aim to magnify the moment, scrutinize it, and perhaps reach a new understanding of it. These paintings are about freezing and compressing time, then elongating it. Then elongating and decelerating it. But these are also about roads, motorways, and waterways. If the road is a common metaphor for the journey of life, then taking snapshots and painting from them is an attempt to capture a moment in that journey. The click of a camera freezes an image that subsequently takes hours, days, weeks to paint. The difference in length of time and amount of effort between snapping the picture and creating the painting echoes the difference between the ease of blithely passing time versus the hard work of living an examined life. I create new space for contemplation and examination, both during the painting process and in the finished pieces. Throughout my years-long fixation with the familiar themes of driving, traveling, and commuting, I am also asserting that even the most mundane activities provide occasions worthy of serious reflection. Wow. I mean, that's kind of an amazing, lengthy statement. And she heads it up by having a quote by artist Howard Hodgkin, who passed away, a British painter who passed away in 2017. His quote was, "I paint representational pictures of emotional situations." And she counters that quote by saying, "I paint emotional situations of representational pictures." Let's look at a few more of these pictures. So here's another example. It's a little bit less about rain and water, but much more about sort of the passing of these sturdy storefronts. Again, times specifically early morning. You've got the inclusion of the side view mirror, which really helps to situate the scene and your place in it as a viewer. And this is how you kind of experience a lot of these more urban settings as you whisk by in an automobile. Another of her smaller pieces. And here is, I wanted to make sure I included some of these pictures that do not include water. She does not paint only rainy scenes, although that is what she's particularly best known for. This is Morning Manhattan from 2019, another very, very small work. But like so much of her work, it's really interested in light. And in some peculiar ways. She's very similar in some ways to the Impressionists in that she's very interested in how light at different times of the day can affect the scene. And in under different weather conditions too. So you will oftentimes see in her works a specific time of day mentioned in the title, which you will see in French and American Impressionist works as well. So morning, early dawn, things like that you will see in the title, and you will also oftentimes experience different weather conditions, and to a certain extent, different seasons. And those were the kinds of things that many of the French and American Impressionists were interested in as well. Here, this is Street Lights. Not a huge painting, 9 by 19 inches, but I want to include share a few more quotes from her. So she says she's interested in both daytime and nighttime scenes. Okay, she said, "I chase the rain. It makes colors explode and come out like jewels, like garnets and sapphires. Painting rainy scenes helps me see things in a new way. It is a great means of exploring my technical ability and experimenting with abstraction and seeing how far I can push that." And also, since this is a more than likely a scene of New York, I have a quote. She said that New York, she oftentimes paints images of New York City, and she says, "It has so much to offer: colors, complicated streets and lights, construction projects, plus so many ways to get around. I try to time these visits to coincide with rainstorms, but I'm not always so lucky." And here's one of those instances where she was lucky to be in New York. One presumes with you see construction, you see workmen's cones, you see people, you see the raindrops. You're definitely in a car looking onto this scene. So much going on here, so many lights to depict. Look at how those lights, those different colored lights, are being picked up in the rain droplets themselves. You see the wonderful attention to detail. It's picking up, it's reflecting and refracting that light for the viewer. Here, another one. I'm showing you a couple of her more horizontal pieces. That last one was one. Here's another one that's not about the rain, but another sort of more horizontal piece that's 11 by 22 inches, called Western. Again, the subject, like so much of her work, is really about light. It's really about light and how light hits things and how light behaves in different situations. Americana 2, again, another one of her horizontal pieces. This is 3 feet wide. You get those, again, those wonderful trickles of water coming down. But yeah, what a tour de force. And you really see how she really explores a lot of reflection on the street from sort of that wet pavement causes a lot of reflection. And then the rain droplets themselves contain a lot of refraction. And here's this, again, kind of overall horizontal composition, but it's actually three small panels that are, that are sort of strung together, making a single composition. And here there are rain droplets, but they are blurred out. They're really, really tiny. The overall dimensions are 4 by 12 inches, super tiny. And here, a fall scene falling through. And again, you don't see the context for the window, but you presume it's a car window because you're kind of situated sort of on the street there. And you see this tree through that. And this is a big painting. This is 50 by 36 inches. So it's 3 feet wide by more than 4 feet high. I think, yeah, here I have it enlarged for you. Again, extraordinary trickle of water that come down. And look at how the raindrops are totally distorting the scene behind it. And this is one of those kind of explorations about how far she can make a composition abstract. And here, again, that last one was vertical. This is another vertical composition. Again, large. It's 4 feet high. And this without the rain. But again, it's another landscape scene. I kind of wanted to show these two landscape scenes juxtaposition. There's a road there in both cases, and it's how we kind of experience the world. Oftentimes is through roads or paths for sure, as a metaphor for that journey of life. Here again, the subject is light. I mean, look at the way that she's handled those wonderful potentially stormy rain clouds in the sky, and that burst of sun on the path up above, up in front of the viewer. And that's going to be there, but then in a moment it's going to be gone. Here, I'm sorry, I forgot I had an enlargement of it as well. And another vertical piece, fairly large, 15 by 32. This is more of pure water. So she mentioned that she looks at multiple modes of transportation. Certainly, the car is one that figures very prominently in her career, but she also takes ferries and planes. And this is probably a view from the back of a ferry because you've got this chop in the water that comes from the boat itself. This is blue foam, and this is a little different. This is not an oil on canvas. This is a sumi ink on paper. So this is really more kind of in that sort of watercolor drawing genre. And here a detail of it. Here an oil on canvas, wake beyond the glass. And so you can tell that she's looking through the glass because you see some distortions in the composition, especially in the darker areas. You can see it. There are rain droplets that she's looking through to capture this wake. And then even moreover, this portal, which is very much like her car or automobile images. And instead, you're looking through a porthole that has had a water splash on it out into the sea, which is now very, very blurred and indistinct. And this is a 3 by 3 foot, so it's actually much bigger than it feels on the screen. And planes. So that's another mode of transportation. And she has an interesting quote about that. Well, presumably we've all flown on planes, and we know that can be trying, and there's an awful lot of waiting that's involved in planes, And so there's plenty of time to kind of sit there and contemplate a life while you're waiting. You got to check in, you got to get your luggage tagged, you got to board by the jetway, and then you got to make your way down the aisle. You got to stow your luggage, you got to get into your seat. You might have to get up and let somebody else in. She does always request a window seat because she uses this as an opportunity to take photos. But she says airplanes differ from other forms of transportation. Once they close the cabin door, the journey begins. The window provides psychological space for private thoughts, even though one is surrounded by people. The moments before takeoff and after landing are the most poignant, and a rainy day makes this even more so. Most of all, however, moving across the tarmac, seeing all the lights, I find it exciting and relaxing at the same time. So here, kind of situated, you see the other planes, you see the lights of the airport there, and how that light's being picked up in all of the rain droplets on the cabin window. Here, another small painting. Here, the plane presumably has begun to move because, as you noticed, if you've ever been on a plane during when there's been some rain or water on the plane, that becomes these streams of water, these little tricklets of water that become very horizontal because the plane is in motion. Here, takeoff from 2022. You see another plane taking off, and you're situated there. The context is clear, even though you don't see the curve of the cabin window. You know exactly where you are. Or your evening flight. Again, very interested in times of day. And look at how she's really picked out the beautiful reflection. It's not raining now, but it has been raining. And it's very clear in the composition that it has been raining. It's a really wonderful sheen off of the surface of the tarmac. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of other water-based images by Karen Woods, which are kind of fun but very different from the other works that I've shared with you. This one's called Fountain. It's a lawn sprinkler. And again, she's still, even though this is quite different from her other work, she's still very interested in the effects of light and water and how that can look and how this becomes this extraordinary kind of glowing fountain in someone's front yard. Or here are seven sprays. This is a sort of sprinkler that's going on. And look at how she's treated the sidewalk. This extraordinary sheen of reflection. Again, super interested in light and what light is doing on a particular scene. Or here, more overtly called reflection, because it really is about the reflection of the water that's running off as a result of these sprinklers. And there's even a sheen, a non-wet sheen off the street itself. So a little bit different body of work for her, but very much related to her other bodies of work. And that kind of brings us back to our piece. So you can see elements of our work in all of these other works that I have shared with you. And you can see things in our work that come from all of these other works. So you can see how these are all very, very much related. The sense of light, the importance of light, how light reacts with water, the reflection, the refraction, really kind of exploring these journeys that are the journeys of life that we all experience together, and reaching out with these everyday, somewhat mundane scenes, and making them beautifully poetic, creating a great deal of interest in things that might normally not even think about, might just simply pass by, if you will, and freezing that moment for us and situating us in that moment and allowing us to contemplate all of the wonder that something as simple as rain droplets on a car windshield can how something as simple as that can be so very, very powerful. So with that, I think I'm going to uh, see stop sharing. By in here, just do that. All right. So, um, let me see here. Minimize that. Okay, there we are. I thought I lost you there, but it was just figuring out, you know, technology at its best. I'd be happy to answer any questions. My goal was really to provide you with some context, some visual context for our paintings, as well as share with you some really, really insightful quotes from the artist. She really had a way of sort of opening up her pieces and helping me to see them in a different way. They're marvelous visually, but to hear her talk about the work really makes them even richer compositions. Any questions that anyone has?
Sean, you might have said, and I might have missed it, but did she talk about how she's photographing the images that she's working from?
No, precisely. I mean, like what kind of camera she's using and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, no, I don't know that. I mean, she takes lots and lots of pictures. And she does talk about prints, although I'm not sure if she's really printing them out. She may very well be, because she does reference prints precisely, and just even printing things is harder to do these days than it used to be. But I know from my reading and from my research that she takes hundreds and hundreds of photographs, and then but with what she doesn't say precisely, and then calls through them to pick the ones that really resonate for her, the ones that she has an emotional response to, that really I think takes her back into that moment, because she feels that those are probably the most powerful images that would resonate with her viewers as well. So, but I didn't in my research find any. I wasn't looking for it either, but I didn't find any reference to what kind of, what she uses specifically to take these photographs, whether it is a formal camera, or whether it's an iPhone camera, or what have you. I don't know, but I do know that she takes lots and lots of them.
Okay, sure.
Oh, thanks, Sean. That was really fascinating and amazing, intriguing, interesting. I don't know, you could really, really think about everything she said for a long time.
Yeah, I think she's, extraordinarily gifted with language as well
Yes,
as with paint.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
so when I stumbled across those quotes, I was like, my goodness, I can't possibly say anything better than what she's already said about her work. And so I wanted to be sure to share her own words about her
Wow.
work, because it really does give us insight into the kinds of things that she's thinking about as she's creating it, and the kinds of things that she's trying to achieve in the creation. And I just thought that she expressed herself beautifully in her writings. And so, yes, you're right. You could actually chew on her writings for quite some time and continue to get a lot out of them.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for joining me this evening. And like I said, we're going to take a break over the summer. There won't be any one night stands over the summer, but we'll resume this programming in the fall. And so I hope I've left you with a good one to carry you through the summer season. And we'll see you again in the fall. Thank you for joining me this evening.